Maya was an elderly woman who lived in a small, peaceful town. Her house was simple but full of life. Flowers of every color grew in her garden, and she took great pride in caring for them. Each morning she would wake up early, stretch her arms and go outside to water her plants. Birds often sang around her, and the gentle wind would carry the scent of flowers across her yard. For Maya, mornings were the happiest part of the day. This particular morning was sunny and the sky was a clear blue. Maya hummed a soft tune as she carried a watering can to the rose bushes. She had lived in this town for many years and had always felt safe and welcome here. She knew most of her neighbors and they often stopped to chat while she worked in her garden. Children sometimes ran past her house on their way to school, waving hello. Maya loved these little routines, and she always felt a sense of calm and joy during these quiet hours. As she bent down to water the tulips, Maya noticed movement at the edge of her garden. 2 uniformed police officers were walking slowly toward her house. She straightened up and watched them carefully. It was unusual for officers to visit her home, and she wondered what could have brought them here. Maya had never had trouble with the law, and she had always tried to live honestly and kindly. She felt a small worry in her chest but took a deep breath to remain calm. The officers stopped near the garden gate and nodded politely. "Good morning, ma'am," one of them said. Maya returned the greeting with a small smile. She wanted to be polite and respectful, even though she did not yet understand why they were there. "Good morning, officers. Can I help you?" she asked in her gentle voice. Her words were careful, steady, and kind. She wanted to show that she had nothing to hide. The taller officer cleared his throat and began to explain. "There has been a report of a minor theft in the neighborhood," he said. "We are speaking to residents who might have seen something." Maya listened carefully, nodding slightly. She thought about her morning and realized she had not seen anything unusual. She loved her garden and the quiet of her home, and she had not noticed anything wrong. Still, she knew she must respond respectfully. "I'm sorry, officers," Maya said softly. "I have been in my garden all morning watering the flowers. I did not see anyone take anything or do anything suspicious." Her hands, slightly wrinkled from years of gardening, rested calmly on the watering can. She spoke clearly, without raising her voice or showing anger. She hoped that her explanation would be enough. The officers exchanged a quick glance. One of them nodded but said, "We may still need to speak with you at the station just to ask some questions." Maya felt a small twinge of fear. She had never been asked to go to the station before. She wondered if they truly believed she could have been involved. Her mind raced for a moment, but she reminded herself to stay calm. She had always believed that honesty and patience were the best approach in any situation. Maya set down the watering can and wiped her hands on her apron. She looked at the officers with steady eyes. "I will come with you," she said politely. "I have nothing to hide, and I will answer any questions you have." She took one last look at her garden, her flowers swaying gently in the morning breeze. She felt a mix of nervousness and determination. Maya knew that she had done nothing wrong, and she would face this calmly without fear or anger. As they prepared to leave, some neighbors began to notice the officers at Maya's house. They came out of their homes curious and concerned. Maya waved to them with a gentle smile, signaling that she was fine. She wanted everyone to know that she was safe and composed, even if the situation felt unusual. Her calmness gave her neighbors confidence and reminded them of the kind, strong woman they all respected. Maya walked slowly to the patrol car with the officers. She held herself upright, her head high and her mind clear, though she did not know what the next moments would bring. She trusted that truth and patience would guide her through. The quiet morning of her small town was about to change, but Maya was ready to face it with courage, kindness, and calmness. Maya sat quietly in the patrol car, her hands resting gently on her lap. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, making the interior of the car feel warm but slightly tense. She watched the town pass by, familiar streets, small shops, and children walking to school. Everything seemed ordinary, but she could feel the seriousness in the officers' expressions. Maya remained calm, taking slow, steady breaths. She had lived a long life and faced challenges before, and she knew that patience and honesty were her strongest allies. The ride to the station was silent at first. The taller officer focused on the road, while the other occasionally glanced at Maya. After a few minutes, he spoke. his voice firm but polite. "Ma'am, we received a report of a minor theft in the neighborhood. We believe someone saw a person near the scene around the time it happened. You match the description given by the witness." Maya's eyebrows rose slightly. She shook her head gently. "I am sorry," she said in her soft voice, "but I have been at home all morning tending to my garden. I have not seen or taken anything." Her words were clear and honest. She wanted to make sure they understood that she had nothing to hide. Her tone was calm, not defensive. She had learned that anger and shouting only make situations worse. The officers exchanged a glance, and the younger one asked, "Are you sure? Can anyone confirm where you were this morning?" Maya nodded. "Yes, several neighbors walked by my house this morning. You may ask them if you like. I was in my garden the entire time, watering my flowers and enjoying the sunshine." The taller officer sighed, clearly unsure. "We still need you to come to the station. We have to ask a few questions and make a report." Maya felt a slight worry in her chest, but she did not show it. She had learned long ago that fear could cloud judgment. Instead, she kept her voice steady. "I understand. I will answer your questions. I have nothing to hide, and I hope the truth will be clear." As the car continued through the town, Maya thought about the situation. She had always trusted the officers and believed in fairness. Yet now she felt the weight of misunderstanding. She wondered how quickly people could assume something was wrong without knowing the facts. She reminded herself that being patient and kind would help guide the truth to the surface. When they arrived at the station, Maya stepped out of the car carefully. The building was large and official, with officers moving about and filing papers. Maya noticed the small details: the clean floors, the organized desks, and the quiet hum of activity. She felt a mix of nervousness and determination. She had done nothing wrong, and she would speak honestly. She hoped that honesty would speak louder than fear or suspicion. Inside the station, Maya was led to a small room with a table and a few chairs. The walls were painted a soft cream color, and the sunlight from the window made the room feel less intimidating. The officers asked her to sit, and she obeyed calmly. She straightened her back, folded her hands on the table, and waited for their questions. Her posture showed respect and patience. The questioning began carefully. The officers asked where she had been that morning, what she had done, and if she had seen anyone suspicious. Maya answered each question clearly, describing the exact order of her morning. She explained how she had watered her tulips, checked the roses, and even fed the birds. She remembered small details, like the way the sunlight touched her garden and how a neighbor's cat had walked across the fence. Every detail showed she had been home living her usual routine. As Maya spoke, the officers began to pause. They looked at each other and then back at her. Something in her calmness, her clarity, and her honesty made them question their initial assumptions. Maya noticed the change in their expressions, but she did not react. She continued to answer patiently, confident that truth and composure would guide the situation. Maya's quiet strength filled the room. The tension slowly began to ease and a sense of order returned. She had shown that even in a moment of misunderstanding, one could remain calm, honest, and dignified. The officers started to see that perhaps their suspicion had been premature, and that a mistake might have been made. Maya stayed calm, ready for whatever would come next, knowing that patience and honesty were her greatest allies. Maya sat quietly in the small room at the station, her hands folded neatly on the table. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting soft patterns across the floor. She could hear the faint sounds of people moving in the hallways and the distant ringing of telephones. Though the room was calm, there was a tension in the air. The officers were still unsure about the situation, and Maya felt the weight of their uncertainty. She remained composed, her mind clear and focused. She knew that patience and honesty would help her through. Outside the room, some neighbors had gathered near Maya's house. Word had spread quickly that the officers were at her home, and curiosity had drawn them out. People whispered among themselves, wondering why the gentle, kind woman from their neighborhood was being questioned. Some looked worried, while others shook their heads in disbelief. Everyone in town knew Maya. She was the woman who shared her flowers, helped carry groceries, and always had a smile for anyone who passed by. It was hard for them to believe that she could be involved in anything suspicious. Back in the station, the officers continued to ask questions. They asked Maya to explain her morning routine again, and she did so clearly and calmly. She described watering the tulips, checking the roses, and feeding the small birds that came to her garden each day. She even mentioned seeing a young boy deliver newspapers down the street. Her detailed recollection showed that she had spent the morning exactly where she said she had been. The taller officer leaned back in his chair, frowning slightly. He seemed unsure. Maya noticed his expression, but she did not let it distract her. She continued to speak with a calm voice and steady gaze. Her honesty and composure made a quiet impact on the room. The officers began to realize that perhaps they had acted too quickly, assuming something was wrong without enough evidence. Meanwhile, at her home, the neighbors were discussing what had happened. Some had seen Maya in her garden earlier that morning and tried to explain this to each other. A few even considered going to the station to support her. The quiet community, which usually shared smiles and greetings, now shared a concern for someone they all cared about deeply. The thought that someone could doubt Maya made their hearts heavy, but they trusted her. Inside the room, the younger officer shuffled some papers and glanced at Maya. "We just need to be sure everything is correct," he said softly. Maya nodded. She understood that rules and procedures were important, but she also felt the frustration of being doubted despite her innocence. Still, she kept her calm. She believed that frustration would not help, but honesty and patience would. Maya's mind stayed focused. She thought about the details she could share that would clarify the misunderstanding. She mentioned the flowers she had watered, the times the birds visited, and the moment she had seen a neighbor pass by. Every detail was small, but it created a clear picture of her morning. The officers listened carefully, slowly realizing that Maya's story did not have a single inconsistency. As the minutes passed, the tension in the room started to shift. The officers' faces softened and their tone became less firm. Maya noticed the change, but she did not react outwardly. She stayed calm and composed, letting the truth speak for itself. Her calm presence seemed to make the room lighter. Finally, the taller officer sighed and rubbed his forehead. He looked at Maya with a mixture of surprise and concern. "It seems you have been honest with us and your story matches what we know so far," he said slowly. Maya nodded gently. "I only told the truth," she replied, her voice steady and kind. The tension in the room, which had seemed so heavy a short time ago, began to fade. Maya's patience, composure, and honesty had created a sense of clarity. The officers were starting to understand that they might have made a mistake. Outside, the neighbors continued to watch and wait, their faith in Maya growing stronger with each passing moment. Maya remained seated, calm, and dignified. She knew that the next moments would reveal more, but she trusted that truth and patience would guide the situation to the right outcome. Even in the middle of tension and uncertainty, she had not lost her composure. She had shown that calmness and honesty could shine brightly, even in the most difficult circumstances. Maya felt a quiet strength as she walked to the patrol car with the two officers. The morning air was fresh, carrying the scent of flowers from her garden. She glanced at her home one last time, noticing the roses and tulips swaying gently in the sunlight. Her heart felt calm even though the situation was unusual. She had always believed that honesty and patience were the best way to face any challenge, and she intended to hold to that belief now. The officers opened the car doors for her politely. Maya stepped inside, her movements careful and composed. She settled into the back seat, folding her hands on her lap. The interior of the car was unfamiliar to her, but she observed everything with curiosity. The seats were neat, and the dashboard had many buttons she had never seen before. Despite the strangeness, she focused on staying calm. She knew that keeping a clear mind was more important than worrying about the unknown. The taller officer started the engine, and the car moved smoothly through the quiet streets. Maya watched familiar houses pass by, each with its own small garden or neatly trimmed lawn. She recognized the small bakery on the corner and the little park where children often played. Everything seemed ordinary, but she could feel the seriousness of the moment. The officers were focused, their eyes on the road, their expressions careful. Maya understood that they were doing their job, but she hoped that soon the truth about the misunderstanding would become clear. Silence filled the car for a few minutes. Maya took slow breaths and looked out the window. She thought about the morning so far, watering the flowers, feeding the birds, and seeing the neighbor's cat wander across the yard. She recalled every detail carefully, knowing that clear memory could help explain the situation. She had always paid attention to small details in life, and now that habit felt useful. Finally, the younger officer spoke, his voice soft but steady. "Ma'am, I want to ask a few more questions before we reach the station. We need to make sure that nothing is missing from the report." Maya nodded politely. "I understand," she replied. "I will answer any questions honestly. I have nothing to hide." Her voice was calm, confident, and kind. She hoped that her composure would make the process easier for everyone. The officers glanced at each other briefly. Maya noticed the pause and felt a small reassurance. Perhaps they were beginning to realize that her story was consistent and truthful. She continued to observe the world outside the window. Seeing familiar streets and neighbors walking or cycling along the paths, she smiled gently to herself, thinking about how small and peaceful the town usually was. It seemed unusual that a misunderstanding could create such tension, but she believed that patience and honesty would guide the situation toward clarity. The younger officer then asked her to describe exactly where she had been that morning. Maya explained in detail, mentioning how she had walked from the front gate to the garden, carried the watering can carefully, and tended to each flower in turn. She described the sunlight hitting the roses, the birds that came to her bird bath, and the way the cat had curled up near the fence. Her description was precise, calm, and natural. The officers listened attentively, and Maya noticed the change in their expressions, uncertainty mixed with curiosity. As the patrol car moved closer to the station, Maya reflected on the importance of composure in difficult situations. She had seen many moments in life where rushing to judgment or acting in anger caused problems. She hoped that this situation would be resolved fairly, and she trusted that truth and patience would show the right path. Finally, the building of the station came into view. Its walls were painted light gray, and a few officers could be seen moving about in the yard. Maya felt a slight flutter of nerves but kept her calm. She straightened her back and prepared to face the next step with dignity. She knew that even though the morning had started quietly, it had grown into an important moment that would test patience, honesty, and understanding. Maya remained silent, but confident as the car stopped. She stepped out gracefully, ready to meet the officers and answer their questions. Her calmness and composure had carried her this far, and she was determined that they would guide the rest of the morning with honesty, clarity, and respect. Maya stepped carefully into the station, her posture straight and her head held high. The building felt larger inside, with polished floors and soft lighting that reflected off the walls. The air was quiet except for the occasional sound of footsteps and the distant ringing of a telephone. Maya felt a mix of nervousness and determination. She knew that being calm and honest was the best way to handle the situation. Her mind was clear, and she was ready to explain everything calmly and truthfully. The officers led her to a small room with a table and a few chairs. Maya took her seat carefully, folding her hands on the table in front of her. The room was simple, with cream-colored walls and a window that let in sunlight. Maya glanced around quietly, noting the neat arrangement of chairs and desks. Though the atmosphere was serious, she felt a small sense of reassurance. She had faced challenges in life before, and she had learned that composure and honesty always mattered. The taller officer began asking questions. "Can you tell us where you were this morning?" he asked. Maya nodded gently. "I was at home," she replied softly. "I was in my garden, watering the flowers, feeding the birds, and checking my plants. I have been there the entire morning." She spoke clearly and calmly, making sure her explanation was precise and honest. The younger officer added, "Did you see anyone suspicious or notice anything unusual?" Maya shook her head politely. "No," she said. "Everything was normal. I saw my neighbors walking by, children going to school, and a few birds in the yard. Nothing seemed unusual." Her voice was steady, and she made eye contact with the officers. Her calmness gave her words weight and sincerity. The officers listened carefully, but one of them still seemed uncertain. He shuffled some papers and asked more questions, trying to understand every detail of her morning. Maya answered each one patiently, describing exactly how she had spent her time. She mentioned the tulips she watered first, the roses she checked next, and even how the sunlight made her garden feel warm and bright. She spoke about the small bird bath near the fence and the way a cat had curled up in the sun. Every small detail painted a picture of her peaceful morning. As Maya spoke, the officers began to pause and glance at each other. They seemed to realize that her story was consistent and clear. Maya noticed their expressions changing, from doubt to quiet curiosity. She continued to answer with patience and honesty, showing no sign of frustration or anger. Her calm presence filled the room, and it became clear that she was telling the truth. Maya also noticed the small gestures of the officers. The taller one stopped frowning, and the younger officer leaned forward slightly, listening more attentively. Her calm and detailed answers made it harder for them to continue doubting her. She felt a small reassurance in her heart, knowing that the truth was slowly becoming clear. Then Maya spoke about her neighbors. "You may ask anyone walking past my house this morning. Some of them saw me tending my garden. They can confirm that I was home and that I did not see anything unusual." Her words were polite and respectful yet firm. She wanted to make sure that the officers understood she had nothing to hide. For a moment there was silence in the room. Maya remained composed, folding her hands and waiting. Her calmness seemed to encourage the officers to reconsider their assumptions. They checked their notes and whispered quietly among themselves. Maya could see that the situation was shifting. Finally, the taller officer sighed softly and said, "Your account is very clear, and it matches other details we have. We may have made a mistake in assuming something was wrong." Maya nodded gently. "I only told the truth," she said. Her voice was steady, kind, and composed. She had remained calm throughout, and it was helping to guide the officers toward understanding. The tension in the room began to ease. Maya's patience, honesty, and calm demeanor were making a difference. She had faced suspicion without fear, and her composure had turned a difficult moment into an opportunity for understanding. The officers were beginning to see that rushing to judgment could cause errors, and Maya's quiet strength was guiding them to the truth. Maya sat quietly, ready to answer more questions if needed, confident that her calmness and honesty were leading the situation to a fair and just resolution. Maya remained calm as the officers looked over their notes. Her gentle expression never changed, and her hands stayed neatly folded on the table. She had answered every question honestly and clearly. Now the room was filled with a quiet tension, but it felt different from before. There was less doubt in the officers' eyes, and their movements were slower, more thoughtful. Maya sensed that the truth was beginning to show itself. Just then the door opened and a young man stepped inside. His name was Liam, a neighbor who often walked past Maya's house in the mornings. He held a notebook in his hand and wore a determined expression. "I came as soon as I could," he said politely. "I saw what really happened this morning, and I think it will clear up the misunderstanding." The officers turned their attention to him. Maya smiled gently at Liam, thankful that someone had come to help explain the situation. She had trusted that her neighbors knew her well, and now one of them was stepping forward. Liam took a deep breath and began to speak, explaining exactly what he had seen. He described the real person involved in the minor incident, and how that person had moved quickly away from the area. His account was precise, honest, and detailed. Maya listened quietly, nodding occasionally. Her calm demeanor encouraged Liam to speak clearly and confidently. The officers asked him questions to make sure every detail matched, and Liam answered with care, pointing out the times and locations he had observed. Slowly, a picture began to form that did not include Maya at all. Every moment of her morning was accounted for, and Liam's testimony confirmed her innocence. The officers leaned back in their chairs, exchanging glances. Their expression showed surprise and relief at the new information. The taller officer adjusted his notes and looked at Maya. "It seems you were completely honest, and Liam's account matches your story," he said slowly. "We made an error in assuming anything was wrong." Maya nodded gently, her calm smile showing no anger. "I only told the truth," she said softly. Her voice was steady and kind. She had faced suspicion without frustration, and her composure was guiding the situation toward fairness. She knew that patience and honesty were stronger than fear or quick assumptions. Liam continued to explain small details about what he had witnessed, describing the actual events clearly. His words left no doubt that Maya had been home the entire morning. The officers listened carefully, realizing that their mistake had caused unnecessary worry. Maya stayed quiet during this part, allowing the truth to speak through Liam's observations. Her patience and dignity made a quiet impression on everyone in the room. The younger officer looked at Maya with a soft expression. "I am very sorry for the misunderstanding," he said sincerely. "You have been completely honest, and we should have confirmed the facts more carefully before approaching you." Maya nodded politely. She did not show anger or disappointment. Instead, she reminded them of the importance of careful observation and patience. "It is important to check all details before making assumptions," she said gently. The taller officer added, "We will make sure this mistake does not happen again. Thank you for your honesty and patience." Maya smiled, feeling a sense of relief and calm. She had faced a challenging moment, yet she had stayed composed and the truth had finally come forward. Her calmness had turned suspicion into understanding. Outside the station, the town was beginning to hear that the misunderstanding was cleared up. Neighbors were relieved and praised Maya for her patience and courage. Her reputation as a kind, gentle, and honest woman had grown even stronger. People spoke of her dignity, and many felt inspired by how she had faced suspicion without fear or anger. Maya remained seated in the room, listening to the officers confirm the details. She felt calm and satisfied. The truth had been revealed thanks to honesty, patience, and the courage of those willing to help. She knew that this morning had been difficult, but it had also shown the power of truth and composure. Even in moments of misunderstanding, patience and honesty could guide the way to clarity and fairness. By the time the officers had finished recording the details and thanking Liam, Maya felt a deep sense of relief. She had faced suspicion with dignity, and now the misunderstanding was being corrected. Her calmness and honesty had turned a tense situation into a lesson for everyone involved, showing that patience and truth always matter. Maya sat quietly in the station, her hands folded on the table, as the officers reviewed the information provided by Liam. She remained calm and composed, her gentle expression never changing. Even after the stressful morning, her patience had not wavered. She had told the truth clearly, answered all questions politely, and now she could see that the situation was turning in her favor. The tension that had filled the room earlier had begun to fade. The taller officer looked at Maya with a serious expression. He cleared his throat and spoke slowly. "Ma'am, we realize that we made a mistake in how we approached this situation," he said. "We should have confirmed all the facts before coming to your home and questioning you. For that, we sincerely apologize." Maya nodded gently, her calm smile showing understanding rather than anger. "Thank you," she said softly. "I appreciate your apology. It is important to be careful before making assumptions. I am glad that the truth is now clear." Her voice was steady and kind. She did not speak with bitterness or frustration. Instead, she spoke with dignity and patience. The younger officer also looked at Maya with sincere eyes. "We acted too quickly," he admitted. "You were honest and patient, and we should have given you the benefit of the doubt. I am very sorry for the worry we caused you." Maya nodded again. She understood that mistakes happen, and she believed that acknowledging them with honesty and kindness was the best way forward. Maya took a deep breath and relaxed a little. She had faced suspicion without anger, and now she could see the importance of calmness and truth. The officer's apologies were sincere, and she felt relief that the misunderstanding was being corrected. She had shown patience and dignity, and now her composure was helping everyone learn a valuable lesson. The officers continued to speak, explaining that they would review their procedures to prevent such misunderstandings in the future. Maya listened carefully, nodding politely. She knew that this experience could help improve the way the officers handled similar situations. Her calmness and honesty had not only cleared her name, but also helped create a lesson for others about patience, careful observation, and fairness. After a few moments, the taller officer extended his hand to Maya. "Thank you for your understanding," he said sincerely. Maya smiled gently and shook his hand. Her gesture was kind, showing that she held no anger and that she valued fairness and honesty above all. The officers were clearly moved by her composure and grace. Liam, the young neighbor who had come forward, also smiled at Maya. "I'm glad I could help," he said. Maya nodded warmly. "Thank you for speaking up. Your honesty helped clear everything," she replied. She had always believed in the importance of helping others and standing up for what was right. Liam's courage had combined with her patience to bring clarity and fairness to the situation. The officers began to pack their papers and prepare to leave. Maya stood up gracefully, her posture calm and dignified. "I hope this will remind everyone that patience and truth are very important," she said softly. Her words were simple but full of meaning. She had faced a difficult moment without anger, and her composure had guided the situation toward understanding and fairness. As the officers left, Maya felt a wave of relief and quiet satisfaction. She returned to the small room and took a moment to breathe deeply. The misunderstanding had been resolved, and her patience, honesty, and calm demeanor had made a difference. She had shown that even in moments of suspicion, composure and truth could guide the way. Outside, the town had begun to hear that the situation was resolved. Neighbors praised Maya for her patience, courage, and dignity. She had faced a challenge calmly and had helped others learn an important lesson about understanding and fairness. The apology from the officers had been sincere, and Maya accepted it with grace, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. Maya's morning, which had started like any other, had turned into an important lesson about honesty, patience, and understanding. She had faced doubt without fear, and now she had helped guide others toward truth and fairness. Her calm strength and kind heart were admired by everyone, and her composure had turned a tense situation into a moment of learning and respect. Maya stepped out of the station into the warm afternoon sunlight. Her heart felt lighter now that the misunderstanding was over. She took a deep breath, enjoying the fresh air and the gentle breeze that carried the scent of flowers from nearby gardens. The tension that had filled her morning had disappeared, replaced by calm and relief. She felt proud of herself for staying composed and honest, even when the situation had been stressful. As she walked home slowly, Maya noticed her neighbors watching from their yards and porches. Many waved at her, smiling warmly. Some came closer, expressing their relief and admiration. "We knew it wasn't true," said Mrs. Taylor, an elderly neighbor who often came by to chat. "We knew you were always honest, Maya." Maya smiled kindly at her. "Thank you," she said softly. "It is always important to stay calm and tell the truth no matter how difficult it may seem." The younger neighbors, who had been curious about the events of the morning, now seemed inspired. Children waved happily as Maya passed, and a few of them ran up to ask how she had stayed so calm. She knelt briefly, speaking gently to them. When something feels wrong, it is important to be patient and tell the truth. Calmness can help solve many problems. The children listened attentively, impressed by her wisdom and composure. At home, Maya returned to her garden. Her flowers seemed to bloom even brighter in the sunlight, as if celebrating her calm victory. She took her watering can and carefully tended to each plant, her hands gentle but precise. The garden had always been her place of peace, and after the morning's challenges, it now felt even more special. The small birds hopped around her feet, chirping cheerfully as if recognizing her kindness and patience. Later, Maya reflected on the events of the morning. She thought about the officers who had acted quickly without knowing all the facts and how she had chosen to stay composed and honest. She realized that her calmness had helped guide the situation toward fairness. Liam, the young neighbor who had come forward, had also shown courage and honesty. Together, their patience and truth had turned a tense moment into a lesson for everyone involved. Maya felt proud of the town as well. She knew that the neighbors had supported her quietly, and that their belief in her honesty had made a difference. She hoped that everyone in the community would remember the morning as a reminder of the importance of trust, patience, and fairness. It was a lesson not only for the officers, but for everyone who had witnessed the events. That evening, the officers returned briefly to ensure everything was properly recorded. They thanked Maya again for her patience and understanding. She accepted their gratitude with a gentle smile. She reminded them softly, "It is always better to check all the facts before assuming anything. Truth and patience can guide the way." The officers nodded, clearly learning from her calm wisdom. Maya's day returned to its quiet rhythm. She prepared a simple cup of tea and sat by her window, watching the sun slowly set behind the trees. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink. She thought about how the morning's events had taught everyone an important lesson about honesty, calmness, and understanding. She felt grateful that she had handled the situation with dignity, and that the truth had come out. By nightfall, the town had begun to share the story. Neighbors spoke of Maya's calmness and honesty, telling how she had faced doubt without fear or anger. Her courage had inspired many to remember that patience and truth can solve problems and turn misunderstandings into opportunities for learning. Maya had become an example of composure, kindness, and wisdom in her community. As Maya went to bed, she felt a deep sense of peace. The day had begun like any other, but it had become a lesson in patience, truth, and dignity. She had faced suspicion without fear, and her honesty had guided the situation to a fair resolution. Her calmness had turned a tense morning into a story of learning and respect. Maya closed her eyes with a gentle smile, knowing that the day's events had made her town a little wiser and a little kinder. The morning's misunderstanding had ended, but its lesson would last much longer. Through calmness, honesty, and patience, Maya had shown that the right approach could guide people toward truth and fairness, leaving a lasting impression on everyone around her.